Well, good morning. Welcome to our For the Valley Business Breakfast. My name is Tyler Scott. I serve as the lead pastor here, and this is a special morning. It's sold out, so give yourselves a round of applause for making it in. We had more people who wanted to be here, but you all made it in. Just a reminder of the vision for these breakfasts. Our church 6 years ago launched a movement called For the Valley. We believe from the bottom of our hearts that being for others, like God is for us, can change the world. And one of the ways that we're for our business leaders and our local community filled with people like you is to have these breakfasts. I don't know how many we've had, probably a half dozen or so, with different leaders that are prominent leaders in our community or around here that can add value to you as a leader in your business, in your marketplace. And today, we have an incredible privilege to have one of the most phenomenal leaders in this entire area. She happens to be a member of our church. We're gonna get into a more detailed intro, but just put your hands together and give a warm CPC and For the Valley welcome for the CEO of PG&E, Mrs. Patti Poppe. All right, thank you. All right, here's an official intro of Patti, a couple things that you may not know about her. The CEO of PG&E, one of only 52 female Fortune 500 CEOs. Congratulations on that. Another fun fact, the only female CEO that went from one Fortune 500 company to leading another one. You have a BA and a master's degree from Purdue. You have a master's in management from Stanford Business School. You're married, you have 2 adult children. You're a faithful member of our church. You live here in the East Bay. And of course, you wouldn't have said yes to this if you were not also for the Valley. And so one more round of applause for Patti for being here. So we're gonna dive into some questions here, but before we get to the questions, I wanna give you all a little bit of context. So we're gonna go back before we move forward. In 2020, PG&E was coming out of bankruptcy from the fallout from all of those campfires, and they were looking for a new leader with vision and wisdom. And one of the terms that you use is you were in Michigan at the time, which is where you're from, and you felt called to this role for such a time as this. And we'll get to that calling in just a minute. But before, let's go further back, and would you speak a little bit about your leadership journey, because you're such a gifted leader. Did you always want to be a CEO, or did the Lord just kind of provide this, and we'll work our way to how you got here in the role at PG&E?
Well, this is gonna be fun. Thank you, Tyler. It's so nice to be with everyone. It's so great to call this area home, and what a treat to be with all of you. You know, if I go back in time, to be a CEO, no, I never thought that was in my future. I'm the youngest of 7 girls. There's 7 of us. And my dad was an engineer and desperately wanted one of us to be an engineer. And so I was his last ditch, final effort to get an engineer out of the bunch. And he succeeded, but he took a stand for me and my career and my life. And so I went into operations. I started my career at General Motors. I was at GM for 15 years, all building cars in factories. My dream job, after working for a guy named Herb Stone, he came to our plant. I worked in this plant in Detroit Hamtramck Assembly Plant. It was a very hard place to work. And I was growing up, I'm a young engineer, and the plant was not doing well. It was a bit of a disaster. And this leader came in, and within maybe a year and a half, 2 years, he transformed the performance of that plant through us, with us. And I realized what a difference it made in the people's lives at that factory to have a great leader. And so in my mind at that time, so, you know, I was 20 years old, I said, I want to be that kind of leader who can transform organizations and make people's lives better by winning, you know, by doing well and succeeding through people and with people. And so I set out on my career path to do that. So I spent 15 years at GM in operations, moving around, working in different factories, crazy places. I got lots of stories that I'll spare us for another day. I learned a lot about people and learned how to transform. And I became sort of a turnaround person. They'd send me to the worst performing place to try and, you know, get it back on track. And so I learned a lot of tricks about how to do that. And that's really how I got started in the journey to leadership through people.
So you mentioned the word turnaround right there. Your current role, let's talk about one of the more profound things that I remember from one of our first conversations is I said, why did you come here? And the context for where the Lord, and you said, I felt like God called me to it, which is, that's strong language and it's unique language. But just to give you context to what God called her into, you probably all remember those campfires from 2019. PG&E had gone into bankruptcy. They had fired their CEO and they hired you. And you said you felt a call from God to move out here. Like, that is a tough job. We know that we're living in light of what just happened in Southern California in those recent fires. And that was a trigger for many of us who lived through the fires up here. And we're very sympathetic to people down here. But that would be the equivalent, just for context, of having that happen in Southern California. SoCal Edison fires their CEO and looks for someone to come with vision and wisdom to come into that situation and turn that around. And that's what you felt the Lord call you to. How did that happen? Why did you say yes to this?
Yeah. I think I had COVID. No, in all seriousness, you know, I was after I left GM, I went to another utility, and it was actually our hometown utility. I lived in my hometown of Jackson, Michigan. We lived there because my father had retired from the utility in Jackson, Michigan, and I lived 2 doors down from him and was CEO of our hometown utility. And thought I had achieved all of my career ambitions. I lived next door to my sister, next door to my dad in my hometown. It was like a delightful, like it was just, I couldn't pinch me kind of life that we had achieved and were experiencing. And then the things started happening out here in California. We watched from afar. The whole industry, the electric utility industry, is a pretty tight-knit group. And we were all watching what was happening. And my husband and I many times said, oh my gosh, no one is going to take that job. Like, it is so hard. And then I got the call. I got a few calls. I'm like, no, thank you, no, thank you, no, thank you. And then finally, I got a call from our board chair, and he had turned around a different utility, and he's like, listen, Patti, you have too much to offer. He said I was too young, which was not true, but he said, you're too young to like sit there for the rest of your career. You got one more in you. Come do your professional final exam. And my husband and I prayed about it and just said, I used to wonder, how do CEOs know what to do? And all of a sudden, in this moment, I knew what to do.
Wow.
So I said, well, honey, what do you think? And Eric Poppe, God bless him, said, you know what, Patti, I guess we're moving to California. So we came on out. It was December of 2020, so COVID was obviously still a major issue, and we found a house here in the area, and I started January 4th, and here we go. We're not done yet, I promise everybody. We got lots more to improve. We've made some progress, though, and I'd love for people to hear about it.
Well, they will. A big part of your vision and your strategy for turning PG&E around is this motto, leading with love. How did you get to that? What does it entail? And where do you see that bearing fruit already at PG&E?
Well, what I observed from afar, first, I've long subscribed to that idea that at work, there's so much more human element to it than people, I think, sometimes respect. And that it's not just about numbers, it's not just about, the outcome, but it's the outcome through people. And helping people live a full experience in their work is a gift of love. And I stand for joy at work, which is born out of having a real human experience. And so one of the things that was true here at PG&E when I arrived was our safety performance was not good. And I heard from a lot of people that we had to focus on safety. And for me, one of the most important acts of love in a workplace is speaking up when something isn't safe. And it's sometimes the hardest thing to do. And I've had the unfortunate responsibility to attend funerals of coworkers who died on the job. And the expression of love is so intense. People are like, they love the family and they're so sorry and everything and so sad. And my reflection is, it's too late. That's not the moment to tell someone you love them. You need to tell them on the job when they're about to do something that will hurt them and forever change their family. And so leading with love just becomes, I think, a respect for the human element of us in our work, helping people find their true purpose, helping people discover why they are here and what kind of impact they can have is a very human kind of thing. In fact, I have a funny little story for you I'll just tell. I'm back in my car days. I worked for this guy, he's a real car guy, and I was working in this factory in Lansing, Michigan, and he found out that I didn't know how to drive a stick shift. Like, you know, I was just on that age, so I didn't have to learn how to drive a stick shift. And he says, well, Patti, you're a car executive. You have to be able to drive a stick shift. I'm adding it to your performance review. I'm like, what? And he did, and some poor intern had to teach me in the back of the plant how to drive a stick shift. I did it, but I did not like it. But anyhow, he said to me, you're a car person. And he said, and don't you want to go on this car rally with me this week? And I'm like, no, I don't. I don't care about any of that. And he's like, well, you make cars for a living. I said, no. I make people for a living. Cars are just our medium. Mm-hmm. We're changing lives through the work that we do, and when we change the life of a person at work, we change the life of their family. When we change the life of their family, we change the life of the community. And so that's what I have always felt I was up to. I happen to do it in cars, and now I do it in energy, and I feel like it's well placed.
Can I ask a follow-up on that? You mentioned that part of love attending these funerals and how it touched your heart was like, okay, we want to create safe environments for people to work. Could you just speak to a couple specific examples of the safety measures that you've taken thus far?
Yeah, you know, safety is a culture, it's a mindset. And when I arrived here at PG&E, we had, this is shocking what I'm about to say, we were having a coworker fatality every 90 days.
Wow.
At PG&E. That's not normal. So we have transformed our safety culture. It's probably like, you know, when you think about your professional accomplishments, if I just have that one, I am happy to report today we have gone 719 days without a fatality at PG&E. Yeah, that snuck up on me. You know, we've changed how we act, and this whole point of leading with love, I actually, believe it or not, we gather our coworkers. It is our purpose. We say the words. We gather them and we ask them, you know, who do you love? Why? To show the love for your coworker. We use the word love at work, and to get, you know, a stereotypical line worker, you know, the hero in the darkest night, to express their love for one another and then have the courage to express that love on the job by saying, whoa, wait a minute, let's stop. We've implemented tools and techniques that we had actually Diablo Canyon Nuclear Power Plant, which is our nuclear power plant in San Luis Obispo, is one of the highest performing nuclear power plants in the world. They haven't had a fatality in decades. And that team is inside PG&E. So we actually took the safety guy from Diablo Canyon and put him in charge of the whole thing. And we're transforming this culture of how does safety show up every single day. Convert that then to the community safety and all of the challenges that obviously PG&E has a sordid history, going all the way back to the San Bruno gas pipeline incident, through the fires, and there were the Napa fires and the Kincaid fire and the Zog fire and the Camp fires. We were having a major catastrophic wildfire as a result of our equipment every year for 5 years in a row. That had to stop, and so we have implemented drastic improvements in safety around wildfire and have reduced the risk of wildfire as a result of our equipment by over 90%. I want you to know that.
Yeah. You also mentioned, this is more of a human element to your last answer, you also mentioned joy at the job. What brings you the most joy in this job that God has called you to do?
Well, watching those guys be safe. I mean, there's no doubt that brings me joy. I think just leading people through to do things that they thought were never possible. To help people believe that what seems unachievable is achievable. In fact, we have something we call our performance playbook. And these are sort of the things that I knew what we needed to do. We've implemented a lean operating system so that we can do our work right the first time, on time, at a lower cost. Number one, we're doing that, I promise. The lower cost part, I promise, that's coming. Number two, helping people believe that our past was not a predictor of our future.
Right.
I just want you, I know I've got some PG&Ers in the house, and so thank you to my team for being here today. I want you to imagine being a PG&Er for a minute and thinking, is this all we are? Like, are we just destined for disaster? And getting into a position of prevention instead of reaction. I will say, if you're in trouble, you want the PG&E team on the job. They can handle. This team of mine is amazing. We handle a lot of major catastrophes very well, but I want to get out of the catastrophe business and get into prevention, not reaction. And so building out this performance playbook and teaching people something we call breakthrough thinking for the business leaders in the house. I think you'll find this a little interesting. It's a real mindset where you say your ordinary thinking or your current thinking delivers current actions, delivers current outcomes. But so many people want to shift from their current actions and outcomes to extraordinary outcomes without changing how they think. And that actually doesn't work.
Yeah.
You just, get there slower, more consistently. You're going to get to the same place if you think the same way. So interrupting how people think, we have this extraordinary thinking delivers extraordinary actions, delivers extraordinary outcomes as a transition from, status quo. And instead of going through the crisis, often when you're in a crisis, you have to think extraordinary thoughts because you have no choice. But let's skip the crisis part, everybody. And just have some extraordinary thoughts without having a crisis. So we really focus on having extraordinary outcomes. One of the classic stories that I'm sure people will want to hear about, I had done this breakthrough leadership course for my top leaders. They had gone through a 4-day experience. This was in the first year I was on the job, and we came out, and one of my lawyers came to me, and he said, Patti, I have a breakthrough outcome I want to stand for it. I said, okay. He said, we need to bury the power lines. And I'm like, okay, let's have another idea. Like, that one's too hard. And he said, no, Patti, I'm telling you, I've been representing this company. I'm a lawyer. He said, I've been representing this company through all of these disasters. There's only one answer that will actually keep people safe. We need to bury, not all of the power lines, but the high-risk lines. And so he called the workshop, the lawyer guy. It was so wonderful. The lawyer, and then he called the engineers and the finance people, of course, they had to come, and the regulatory people, and we got everyone in this big room, and after a day of these people, my engineers, they had all these great ideas about how we could do it for less. It didn't have to be the most expensive way. There were more affordable. In Germany, they had buried this huge transmission line to get wind to the to the population centers. Like, there was all these facts that we were not seeing. And so we came up with, at the end of the day, we're going to bury the lines. And so we came up with 10,000 miles to bury, and it was born out of this breakthrough thinking. And fast forward, I'll just tell you the last part of this story. Maybe it was 2 or 3 months later, the Dixie Fire started, a mile from the origin of the campfire. To go to Chico, California, and tell them that we would try harder was not going to work.
Yeah.
So I said, everybody, we got to tell them we're burying the lines. They're like, Patti, that's insane. We're not ready to tell them that. Like, we know that we're going to do it. And I said, no, because I know we are going to do it. They need to know that we have changed, that we're not the same old PG&E, that we're going to find a way to do it, and we will do it affordably, but we're going to take a stand together as a company. We're going to Chico. And we went to Chico against all of my advisors' best advice, and we called a press conference, and we told the world, we're going to bury the power lines. And I know you've heard a lot about this, but I want to demystify 2 things. Number one, everyone thinks your bill is up because we did that. That is not true. $1 a month of your bill is for burying power lines. You actually get to build the right infrastructure and spread out the cost over the life of the asset. What is in your bill? $20 a month for vegetation management. $1 a month for undergrounding, $20 a month for vegetation management. It's a bad equation. We cannot take out every tree in California. We have to build infrastructure that's actually designed for the conditions in which we operate.
Got it.
And so we're gonna bury the right amount of lines. The team is working hard. We've cut the cost of it in half. We're not done yet. We're gonna keep reducing the cost. We're gonna do more of it. And we're gonna keep you safe, and we're gonna keep your power on, because I know here in Danville, those of you in the area have had a lot of power outages, and a lot of them are based on our enhanced power line safety settings to keep you safe. If something makes contact with the line that's in the air, we de-energize within a tenth of a second. If there's fire conditions in the area, that's a massive technology implementation we've done, but it causes outages. In 2023, there were 40 outages in Danville. I'm sorry about that. It's not good enough, and you should not be satisfied. No, you're not satisfied with it, actually. You've let me know about that. But I am also not satisfied with that. And we will build infrastructure that is resilient to the climate conditions in which we operate and the beautiful conditions in which we operate. And these beautiful trees can stay, but we got to get those lines out of the air in the high-risk areas. So that was all born out of this breakthrough thinking. We've got a bunch more stories like that. We're transforming how we do our work.
That's a great one. You mentioned that there are a lot of leaders in the house, and I think there are business leaders and influencers, and that's why you're here, to learn from you. But we know that leadership comes with carrying weight, and the weight is because you're constantly facing challenges and you're ultimately responsible. So what do you see as your biggest challenges as the leader in your role? And I just listed a few. You've already mentioned rolling blackouts, fires, building culture or company morale, rising costs for consumers. I know we felt that. And how do you address and overcome those challenges? You mentioned a little bit with the breakthrough thinking, but what beyond that? Like, how do you address and overcome the challenges?
Yeah, the good news is one of the things that the board of PG&E knew they were looking for was an operator. And I think PG&E being operated by an operator and led by an operator is really essential to what gives me confidence that we can, in fact, solve this whole suite of problems. Because if it was one problem, it would be fine. If it were just wildfire, we've made dramatic progress there, 90% reduction in risk. And yet we're not done. We even see what happened in Southern California. It just breaks our hearts. But then you combine that with the need for reliability and the need for safety of coworkers and the need for affordability. And so solving the suite of them is actually the part that I love the most. It's the complexity of figuring out how to do all of those things simultaneously. And in a utility, a company like ours, those things all do go together. And so we put into place our performance playbook. I talked about the breakthrough thinking. We have a safety management system, which is essential to the safety culture I talked about. But the lean playbook is part of that system. And we're adopting and implementing the techniques that Toyota developed years ago, decades ago, the lean operating systems to deliver predictable performance, on-time work at the right price, at a lower cost every single day. And all of that coming together requires that we capture the hearts and minds of my coworkers, because they have to believe that they can do it differently. I've got 28,000 coworkers and 14,000 contractors who work with us every single day. So it's about 40,000 people getting their hearts and minds aligned. And so we talk about head and heart. We've got the lead with love and loving one another, speaking truth to one another, speaking up when something changes. But there's also having the techniques and the methods and the tools to actually do it differently and teach people how to do that. Last year, the team set out a target. These numbers are going to sound crazy, but to save $850 million in the way we do our work. We actually achieved $1 billion of savings in the way that we do our work. So we did the same or more work for $1 billion less than we had forecast in 1 year. We're going to do it again this year. We're going to do it again next year. And one of the things that surprised me when I got to PG&E is if there was any kind of financial crisis, tightness, like we had something went over, so something else has to come in under, our only choice at the time was to not do something. So I talked to some of the builders who are here today. One of our choices, and I think 2022, was to just not connect new customers because we were out of money. That's what we did. It was a terrible situation, terrible idea, terrible decision, but we had no cash. We had just gone bankrupt. We had no cash, and the team had no tools in their kit, which was a big problem,
Yeah.
as you know. We've transformed that. We're not finished yet, but we have dramatically changed. And so last year in the fourth quarter, in 2024, the fourth quarter of the year, we had worked hard to get legislation passed that helped us get the necessary funding flowing. It wasn't that it needed to cost more, but we needed to have cash flow. We got the necessary cash flow, and we were able to pull in. Our plan for 2024 was to do 9,000 new customer connections. We pulled in an incremental 4,000 connections in the fourth quarter from 25 into 24 and did them for half the unit cost because we transformed how we did the work. That wasn't just like throw money and people at it. We actually had to change the way we did the work, and we could do it for half as much and achieve a 30% increase in output in 1 quarter of 1 year. So that's carrying on into this year. All that to say, there are ways to teach people, and when you capture their hearts, when you've got their attention and their minds and they trust and they feel safe, then you teach them how to run a great business, then it's going to be a great business for our customers. And you're at the heart of every improvement that we strive to do. We're always talking about how do we serve our friends, our families, our neighbors better every day.
That's a great quarter, by the way. Congratulations on that. Let's go a little higher, and not just for a minute, because I know we've been incredibly focused on PG&E and our experience with that. Let's maybe just share a little bit of your wisdom as a leader. So how did you build and refine your approach to leadership over the course of your career?
Yeah, I say I did a 180 about halfway through, I will say. Growing up in the auto industry, it was tough business team. I don't know if anybody ever worked automotive, but it's not for the faint of heart. I got mafia stories, all sorts of things. It's crazy. UAW, oh my goodness. So
you want to turn the camera off and tell one of the? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, after we'll have a cup of coffee. I'll tell you the rest of the story. But so I about halfway through my career, actually, is when I switched from automotive to the utilities. I got a call from the head of HR. I was maybe at the utility a month, and I thought, in my impression, I was in my best behavior. The head of HR calls and says, "Whoa, Patti." And he had come from steel business, so he'd come from Bethlehem Steel, and he knew what I was up to. And he's like, that's not gonna work around here. You gotta be nicer than that. I was like, what? I'm on my best behavior. You haven't seen anything yet. And he's like, trust me, that's not gonna fly. So they sent me some version of charm school, if you will. And it worked. And I actually transformed my leadership. I went from like, nothing is ever good enough. And in automotive, it felt like it wasn't. And we got to hurry up to like get stuff done because nothing's good enough. That's one way to operate that's not very fun, honestly. And my team, I think, delivered results, by working harder. And so I transformed that to anything is possible through God and others. And that became my leadership mantra. Anything is possible through God and others. And find joy in the journey. So those two, don't just worry about the destination, but enjoy it as we go. Orient people around possibility, around the idea that they can achieve anything. And believe it or not, you can. When you put your mind to it, you can. You just have to believe first. Every great innovation, somebody had to say the ridiculous thing out loud first, like, we're gonna bury 10,000 miles of line. It wasn't true when we said it, it was crazy. But we're doing it, and we're doing it smarter, better, faster, safer every day. The idea is orienting a team that they can achieve extraordinary things. And so that mantra for me became really, came to light at one of the power plants I was running. I was power plant director. We had like 5 power plants. And the team, we wanted to create a sense of ownership with the team. So we created small cross-functional teams, and I'm telling you, this is a business secret. You should just write this down because it is extraordinary. I have learned it firsthand. That if you get the people closest to the work, solving the problems and owning the outcomes, you can get out of the way and let it just happen. But bosses so often think they have to be the one who is deciding, solving. You want to add value, so you get there in the mix of it. And what I learned is you have to just have really clear outcomes. And so we had this power plant that literally the team had told themselves, well, and it was true. The plant was 20 years old, and every 90 days we had to come off to do this particular cleaning. The team came to me and said, okay, this cross-functional team that we had just, like, I gave them the pep talk, you're the owners, you get to do it. They come and they say, okay, Patti, we have an idea. We have an outage scheduled to do one of the cleanings, and it's supposed to be 5 days. We think it should be 10 days. I'm like, okay, this is going in the wrong direction. We think it should be 10 days, but we're telling you, if you give us 10 days, we'll skip the next one. I was like, well, it's 50-50, you know, it's not actually, we're not ahead in that scenario. And they're like, okay, we'll skip 2. I'm like, they're making it up, like there's no way. But I had made this commitment to them. I was like, oh gee. So I went to my vice president and I said, okay, here's the deal. We're gonna double the length of the outage, but we're gonna skip the next 2. He's like, you're out of your mind. I said, look, I really think we can do it. I didn't know, I wasn't a power plant operator. Right. Sometimes ignorance is bliss. Actually, running a team, you don't know what they do is a benefit. So I stood for them. They did it, and it turned out, not only did they skip the next 2, they ran for a year continuous. You know, and you want to know why? It wasn't necessarily because the work they did on the outage, though that was a piece of it. It was because they owned it. When they did their operator rounds, their reputations were on the line. They were at stake. Mm-hmm. They were the ones who had set their professional reputations out there to say, yes, we can. We got a big award, like longest running plant in history, blah, blah, blah. And all I had to do was say yes. I just had to say yes to the people who were closest to the work, who knew what to do. And what a leadership lesson for me. Yeah. Like, I've done that a million times since, and it pans out.
So speaking of lessons, who are some of your greatest leadership coaches or mentors, and what makes them so great?
Yeah. Well, that Herb Stone I mentioned, he was very consequential early in my career, showing me that if you can help people, if you can lead people to succeeding, you know, you're just gonna have more fun. Yep. So that was one. But then I think all of the lean coaches that I have had through the years, some of them were quite irritating, but they taught me, in fact, the guy who made me drive the stick shift, he was very annoying, but he actually taught me a lot about implementing these lean systems and getting the people at the front to own the work and to lead the work. And then I think some of my greatest mentors were the people who worked, you know, for me, technically, because they, just in the hierarchy, but the people on my teams the people I have met at PG&E who are so dedicated. I have to tell you the story of the first day on the job. These people inspired me. So it was January of 21. My first day on the job, I get in my pickup truck and I drove myself to the Union Hall in Vacaville, and those guys are like, where are your people? I'm like, it's just me. I'm your new CEO. They're like, wow, okay. And so we had a nice chat, and then they went with me, and we went up to Paradise that day. And this was 3 years after the fires. I had a team of people who was there rebuilding the infrastructure. But I have to tell you, that scene, that day, it was still, 3 years later, apocalyptic. Like, I knew what I had signed up for, but I had never visited. We did all my interviews virtually because it was COVID. And so my first day on site was my first day on site. And I met people who had lost their own homes, who had lost family members, and they were there to make it right and make it safe. You want to talk about inspiring. I was inspired by those people that day, and we agreed that we were going to make it right and we were going to make it safe.
What's one of the hardest leadership lessons that you ever learned, and what did you learn from it?
Yeah, I think I could argue that the Dixie Fire starting was one of the hardest lessons, because we had taken a stand as a leadership team in the spirit of breakthrough thinking that catastrophic wildfires shall stop. We are standing for that every day. catastrophic wildfire shall stop. And we don't say ... like because of our equipment or...
yeah, not making excuses.
Yeah, no,
yeah.
period. And so when that Dixie fire started, the team was all like, well, so much for that breakthrough thinking business, like blah, 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 lady. Do you see what is happening? You can't think your way out of this. And I remember, wondering myself for a hot minute, like, maybe they're right. And then no. To double down and say, we've had a breakdown on our breakthrough, but we're not done yet. Like, we are still standing, that catastrophic fire shall stop. There are things we can do. It does mean we have to work with communities. We do have to have defensible spaces. We do have to have 5 feet of clearance from our homes. We do have to have funded firefighters and water systems that work under extreme conditions, all these things. And we can be a force for good to make that happen. Not just our part, but working with our communities, collaborating with others to make our stand come to fruition. Yeah. And we feel quite resolved about that.
So here's a totally different shift of a question. Everybody in here in our business is trying to better understand and leverage AI. How have you taken steps at PG&E to better understand that and leverage it, and what results have you seen?
Yeah.
By the way, we're trying to do it too here at the church.
Yeah, it's really fun. I mean, golly, I think we're all on the brink of so many things. But what we're doing at PG&E specifically, a couple things. We are trying it in customer service, so you might hate it or you might love it, I don't know. But Peggy is our new customer service rep, and she takes outage calls, and she does a really good job. But she does admit she's a bot, so don't worry. But she's got a cute little voice, and she's nice. But I think more substantively, I have doubts about that because I do think human to human is very important. But our drone inspections, we literally 2 years ago were marching around with clipboards, looking at every one of our poles and every one of our things, all millions of assets, and assessing, I think that needs to be repaired. And these were professionals, don't get me wrong, they're not skilled, but it's a guess. And now we are using drones with LiDAR photos, heat sensing equipment, and we can in real time see precisely the condition of our assets. We've increased our inspection frequency 600% at a fraction of the cost, and we are able to allow the AI algorithms to analyze those photos and understand what has changed and what needs to be repaired. It's been a complete transformation of our understanding of our assets and the implementation of the improvements to make them resilient and safe.
Okay, that's awesome. Let's talk about competition a little bit. Most business fields are very competitive. And how do you lead and manage against the perception, this is a perception, that your organization may appear less competitive and more like a monopoly, even though it's not? And I know your heart, you work tirelessly to serve the needs of your customers. But how do you manage that tension? There's a leadership axiom that says, is something a problem to be solved or a tension to be managed? And I think a tension to be managed is the perception versus reality that PG&E is like this monopoly and those types of things. So how do you manage that tension?
Thank you for asking me this. I love getting this question because, look, what is guaranteed for PG&E are 2 things. One, who are our customers? That was decided in the 1930s. Utilities were assigned a franchise in a particular geographic area so that we didn't build 2 sets of poles and 2 sets of power plants, and it was a decision that was made. People think we're guaranteed a profit. We are not guaranteed a profit. Otherwise, we would have never gone bankrupt. We are not guaranteed a profit. What we are is guaranteed revenue that is approved by the CPUC. We have to justify every dollar, and they have to approve the setting of our prices and how much we collect from customers. And so that's a tough job. I got to tell you, sometimes I feel like their job might be harder than mine because they get a lot of pressure to not say yes to things that are really important to do. But our job then is to take that revenue and do the most work possible and find ways of saving and doing more. So our competition comes from a pursuit of doing more for less and transforming how we do our business so that you can experience, as our customers, a better experience at a lower cost. And I am very optimistic that we can, in fact, bend the cost curve here in California on our energy system. We are already starting to. This year, our bills are flat year over year. That's the first time in a long time that that's been true. We are stabilizing our bills. And there are all sorts of things that I'm very optimistic about that we're going to have to compete to win. So, for example, speaking of AI and the data centers and the large load, and we call it large load, that's total industry jargon. That's high usage customers. You know, a data center uses a lot of energy. And states all over the country are competing for the right to serve these large customers. And they happen to all be our customers already. And our customers, Apple, Meta, Salesforce, Google, they all thought we were out of power, which we are not. And so we had to like completely transform how we're communicating with them, and we are now gonna be able to serve that large data load. And the large data load, when done right, and that's what we're working with them on, we're gonna be able to actually reduce prices because we are more fully utilizing our existing infrastructure. So just let me wonk out for one little, just bear with me, this is relevant to you. Our grid in California is underutilized. I know that's hard to understand because, you know, there have been a couple times where we had these things called flex alerts, and we had some threatening rolling blackouts because we were out of power in 2020 and then again in 2022. We were out of power on a handful of days, and we've built 12 gigawatts, just trust me, it's a lot of new battery storage and safe battery storage. I know there was a fire last week. It's a very strange configuration, an unusual configuration. Don't get worried about battery storage. It's a good source of match to all of the solar energy we have here in California. So our renewables matched with batteries have dramatically shifted how much power we actually have in California. We have a lot. And our grid is actually utilized about 45%. 45% utilized, which means we have capacity. But what that also means is the unit cost of electricity is higher. Let me just say why that is. Dollars to maintain the system over kilowatts sold. If we use less, which we have been using less of a full grid, then the unit cost for each of those units of energy has gone up. What we can do is start using more energy. If a large load, electric vehicles, home electrification will actually lower the rate of electricity. It will, because we'll more fully utilize our existing assets. This is big news. I know it doesn't feel like it because it's probably don't even understand what I'm saying. I'm not making sense. But the good news is, this is good news for California. I'm very optimistic about us being able to serve large load. We don't have to give up on our clean energy ambitions. We can both have a clean, resilient, safe, and affordable grid to serve the future. It's very exciting for us, and I just want everyone to know that there's definitely light at the end of the tunnel here.
So is this why you refer to yourself as a climate optimist and a California optimist? I mean, do you have anything else you want to say about that?
Yeah, I know people are feeling like, and especially with the national conversation happening, that we have to give up on the clean energy and we forget about EVs. I'm very optimistic that, first of all, California will stay the course because we actually are on a good course, and we will show the world that we can, in fact, have clean, safe, and resilient energy. So I am optimistic. These new large data center loads and the EVs are the best things that could ever happen to the grid because the grid is underutilized. And so there's a unique confluence of factors here in California, and this was one of the reasons I came. I was pushing a rope in Michigan trying to get people to sign up we had retired our coal plants and we were bringing on renewables, but it was a little bit of a fight. And I was excited to be able to come to California where the future was happening, and we had taken commitment for the future, and that future can actually come to fruition here in an affordable way. And I can't wait to show the world how California is going to lead again.
That's great. So you do not hide the fact, this is a personal question, you don't hide the fact that you're a Christian, which I love. how does your faith inform and influence your leadership?
Well, I have this great pastor, who inspires me. I listen to the sermons and I'm like, oh boy, I didn't do a good job this week. No, it informs me in my sense of purpose. I do want to change lives and be a witness that my faith puts me in a position, and because of my Lord, I am able to serve others with maybe less fear. That I know that serving others is my blessing and my gift, and that we were each made with unique different skills and capabilities, and God equipped me in this way, and I feel very committed to living out that faith. I feel so thankful and grateful for those gifts that I just want to use them for good purpose, and make sure that I am a witness that God is good every day.
Amen. Okay, yeah, we can clap for that. So you are, and you're showing this today, we've got a few minutes left. You're a powerhouse leader of a large organization. There are a lot of leaders in here. There are only 10% of CEOs of Fortune 500 companies are women. What advice would you give, not just to women, but to anybody in here? And you can speak to women specifically if you want, because there are a lot of female leaders in here. There's a lot of female leaders in our church, as you know. What advice would you give to leaders who are trying to level up in their own leadership?
Well, I do think it comes back to what we were talking about earlier about what you say to yourself, your belief in yourself, and tune in to what you say. I guess there's two things. One, if you have a desire on your heart to be a leader, then you should pursue that. Not everybody has that desire on their heart. I did hear a good sermon from someone else. I'm sorry, but it was a different pastor at a different church long ago, who I remember saying, kind of feeling bad because there were certain charitable programs I wasn't that motivated by. They didn't stir my heart, but there were others that really did stir my heart, and I always thought that was interesting. And the pastor said, not everyone is called for every charitable event. When you are called, you'll know joy, and when you're feeling that joy, it shouldn't be hard to give, it should be joyful to give, and when you're feeling that joy, that's when you're doing God's work. Like then you're right where you're supposed to be. And so if one is called to be a leader, and they feel that on their heart, don't ignore that call. Like lean in and believe in yourself, and that self-confidence, and maybe your confidence is born out of your faith, or your confidence is born out of your experiences. That confidence becomes contagious, and next thing you know, people will follow you. And so when you lead with confidence and lead from a place of service, I think you can't go wrong. And so for men who want to support women, don't let them talk themselves out of the job, because I have personally seen that many times. One last very quick story. I had two people working for me, a woman and a man. The man came to me and said, okay, look, I'm the coach of my son's Little League team. That means Wednesday afternoons, I need to leave at 3 o'clock. It's going to be for the next 6 months. Hope that's okay. I'm going to miss that meeting of yours. Can you live with that? I was like, yeah, because he was amazing. He was a fantastic. I'm like, yes, good, go for it. Good luck with the team. Then this woman comes to me and she says, Patti, I can't take this promotion you've just offered me because I have these things on Wednesday afternoons, and I have to go to the things on Wednesday afternoons. She had talked herself out of the job for the same problem he had. He had no problem telling me how it was going to be. She was convinced she couldn't do the job because she couldn't be there on Wednesday at 3 o'clock or whatever. And so I just think believing in people and helping them, if you believe and see something in someone and they're talking themselves out of it, you just got to help them believe in themselves. And I think women sometimes talk themselves out of it.
So 2 questions left, because I want to respect your time and all of your time. We're going to end on time. The first question is, and it comes right off of where you just left that one, and that is, how do you balance it all? Because you're the CEO and leader of a large organization. You are in a loving, healthy marriage. You are an amazing mom to 2 adult children. How did you strike and achieve that balance? And what advice could you give some of the rest of us, whether we're women or men in here?
Yeah, I also love getting this question. Thank you for asking. I don't. I don't strive to even. What I have learned, and bear with me because I think you might be, well, anyhow, I'll get to my point here. I've long subscribed to a theory called Ikigai. It's a Japanese philosophy about living a full and purposeful life. And it has 4 key components. The first component is to get paid for what you do. I think a lot of people in pursuit of their life stop at that thing. Go to the place where I can get paid the most and be the thing and make the money. That is insufficient. You won't find joy just by pursuing the money. That is not the thing. But the 3 other components are what make it a complete and purposeful life. The doing what you are good at, which many of us do. We get paid for, we get good at it. Some people might stop there. But how about something that you love, which might be more than just what you're good at? So do what you're good at and do what you love. And then 4th, do something the world needs. And when you are living a life where you are, and I live a life and have for many years, lived a life where I am doing what I'm good at, I'm doing what I love, and I'm making a difference in the world, and I get paid, that's the balance that I seek, and I bias my life to those things. And that includes time with my family and having my hobbies are my family. And that is how we've made it work. I also have an incredibly amazing husband who moved to California for me and has done a lot of crazy adventures. As a team. We've had an extraordinary marriage and life together, and that partnership obviously been a big part.
Yeah, he's super bright, great thinker, asks great questions.
Yeah, he's my secret weapon. I'll come home and be like, oh, blah, blah, blah. And he'll say, well, did you ask this? I'm like, no, that is a good one. And did you ask this? No, that's another good one. I'll come back the next day. Okay, guys, I was thinking about it overnight. I have a few questions.
Last question here this morning, and I asked this question to pretty much everybody who says yes to one of these, and it's just a chance to hear your heart. Why did you say yes to this event? Because you get asked to speak at lots of things. You were just in Switzerland and London and flew in, a day ago. Like, why did you say yes to this, to be here with us?
Well, I love calling this area my home. I love this being my home church. And Tyler, if you asked me to do anything, I would say yes. But, I want people here in our community. Our official purpose at PG&E is delivering for our hometowns, serving our planet, and leading with love. And I want you to feel that. I want you to experience that. And I know this is a long form answer, and just seeing a commercial or a bill is definitely not a way to feel that. And I want the people of our community to know how dedicated we are to serving you, and that there is light at the end of the tunnel. We're turning the corner. We've made it safe. That's been our number 1 priority. And now we're going to make it right, and we're going to make it right for each of you, and I wanted our community to know that.
Well, thank you so much. On behalf of our church and our community, would you just put your hands together and say thank you to Patti, Poppe? Thank you so much. It was amazing. You can walk off. I don't know how long you have. Like, that's up to you and your team. And so I don't know if you're gonna be back, or if you need to go, you can go. But just let me say a couple closing remarks,
yes,
okay? That's up to you. If she's here, you can talk to her. If not, we got plenty, amen? Just as you go, just a word to all of you. I wanna remind you, the reason we do this is to make a deposit into you as leaders and influencers and contributors in our community. We love you doing what you do. We really relish the opportunity to encourage you as you seek to merge your faith and your work. I know that everybody here isn't a person of faith. If you're interested or curious about things of faith, I hope this would be a place where you could always come and ask your questions and explore a journey of meeting Jesus and following him. That's why we do what we do. But there also are there's some information and some people back there that would love to engage you if you're looking to say, what is the next step that I can take to kind of integrate my faith and my work in ways that Patti has or other people have. And so those opportunities and those materials are available. Would you just stand? And I want to close us in a prayer, and then we'll be on our way here this morning. Thanks. We'll bow our heads, close our eyes. Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you for these women and men in this room. I thank you for the leadership positions that you have given them, for the opportunities to contribute and to better our community and our valley. I thank you for being a part of a church that takes very seriously the goal of being for the people, the local businesses, the local schools, the first responders, the local government, the families of our community. And so, Lord, we lay this opportunity at your feet. We pray your blessing over Patti. We thank you for her deposit that she made into us this morning. We pray for her leadership, for the organization of PG&E. Lord, it's an interesting dynamic given that we're all customers, and yet we feel like we can also pray on her behalf and their behalf that you would help them to better serve and lead in our areas in ways that influence us. We pray your blessing over her family, over her marriage, over her kids, and over the relationships that she's building in and through the large, important role that you've called her to. We thank you for this morning. We lift all of this to the name of Jesus, and all God's people said, amen. God bless you. We'll see you at the next one.